Language Foundations Vocabulary Flashcards, helping you achieve understanding.
The branch of physics that deals with the emission and effects of electrons and with the use of electronic devices. The science of matter and energy and their interactions. The science of matter and energy and their interactions. His favorite subject was physics. The physical properties, phenomena, and laws of something. He studied the physics of radiation. The branch of electronics that deals with beams of electrons and their focusing and deflection by magnetic fields. The branch of electronics dealing with thermionic phenomena, especially thermionic vacuum tubes. The branch of electronics that deals with miniature components. Designating the reproduction of sound using two or more independent audio channels. Electronics. Graph showing how a particular characteristic of a device varies with other parameters. A prominent attribute or aspect of something. Generosity is one of his best characteristics. Any measurable property of a device measured under closely specified conditions. A distinguishing quality. The integer part, positive or negative, of the representation of a logarithm. In the expression log 643 equals 2.808, the characteristic is 2. Typical or distinctive. Heard my friend's characteristic laugh. Electronics. Graph showing how a particular characteristic of a device varies with other parameters. A fast sailing ship used in former times. Electronics. A nonlinear electronic circuit whose output is limited in amplitude. Used to limit the instantaneous amplitude of a waveform, to clip off the peaks of a waveform. Scissors for cutting hair or fingernails, often used in the plural. Shears for cutting grass or shrubbery, often used in the plural. A person who is in a position to give you special assistance. He used his business contacts to get an introduction to the governor. The physical coming together of two or more things. Contact with the pier scraped paint from the hull. A thin curved glass or plastic lens designed to fit over the cornea in order to correct vision or to deliver medication. Be in or establish communication with. He never contacted his children after he emigrated to Australia. A communicative interaction. The pilot made contact with the base. Be in direct physical contact with, make contact. The wire must not contact the metal cover. A channel for communication between groups. The act of touching physically. Her fingers came in contact with the light switch. Electronics. A junction where things, as two electrical conductors, touch or are in physical contact. They forget to solder the contacts. Close interaction. They kept in daily contact. The state or condition of touching or of being in immediate proximity. Litmus paper turns red on contact with an acid. Electronics. The reception of a signal by extracting it from the carrier wave. Any measurable property of a device measured under closely specified conditions. Ring or echo with sound. Call to mind. His words echoed John F. Kennedy. To say again or imitate. Followers echoing the cries of their leaders. The repetition of a sound resulting from reflection of the sound waves. She could hear echoes of her own footsteps. A close parallel of a feeling, idea, style, etc. His contention contains more than an echo of Rousseau. An imitation or repetition. The flower arrangement was created as an echo of a client's still life. A reflected television or radio or radar beam. A reply that repeats what has just been said. Greek mythology. A nymph who was spurned by Narcissus and pined away until only her voice remained. Characteristic of or relating to the physical properties of solid materials, especially electromagnetic or thermodynamic or structural properties of crystalline solids. Consisting of semiconductor materials and components and related devices. Capable of operating independently. Two photographs taken from slightly different angles that appear three-dimensional when viewed together. Reproducer in which two microphones feed two or more loudspeakers to give a three-dimensional effect to the sound. Designating the reproduction of sound using two or more independent audio channels. Designating the reproduction of sound using two or more independent audio channels. A terrorist network intensely opposed to the United States that dispenses money and logistical support and training to a wide variety of radical Islamic terrorist groups, has cells in more than 50 countries. Of low birth or station, base, is archaic in this sense. Base-born wretches with dirty faces. Use purified cocaine, by burning it and inhaling the fumes. Lowest support of a structure. It was built on a base of solid rock. A support or foundation. The base of the lamp. The most important or necessary part of something. A place that the runner must touch before scoring. Illegitimate. Numeration system. The positive integer that is equivalent to 1 in the next higher counting place. A phosphoric ester of a nucleoside. The basic structural unit of nucleic acids, DNA or RNA. A lower limit. Serving as or forming a base. The painter applied a base coat followed by two finishing coats. The fundamental assumptions from which something is begun or developed or calculated or explained. Linguistics. The form of a word after all affixes are removed. The place where you are stationed and from which missions start and end. The stock of basic facilities and capital equipment needed for the functioning of a country or area. The industrial base of Japan. Having or showing an ignoble lack of honor or morality. That liberal obedience without which your army would be a base rabble. Any of various water-soluble compounds capable of turning litmus blue and reacting with an acid to form a salt and water. Bases include oxides and hydroxides of metals and ammonia. Not adhering to ethical or moral principles. Base and unpatriotic motives. Installation from which a military force initiates operations. The attack wiped out our forward bases. Use as a basis for, found on. Base a claim on some observation. A flat bottom on which something is intended to sit. A tub should sit on its own base. Anatomy, the part of an organ nearest its point of attachment. The base of the skull. Debased, not genuine. An attempt to eliminate the base coinage. Electronics, the part of a transistor that separates the emitter from the collector. Situate as a center of operations. We will base this project in the new lab. The bottom or lowest part. The base of the mountain. The bottom side of a geometric figure from which the altitude can be constructed. The base of the triangle. The principal ingredient of a mixture. Glycerinated gelatin is used as a base for many ointments. Used of metals, consisting of or alloyed with inferior metal. Base coins of aluminum. Electronics. A system of interconnected electronic components or circuits. A semiconductor device capable of amplification. A wrong action attributable to bad judgment or ignorance or inattention. I could understand his English in spite of his grammatical faults. An imperfection in an object or machine. The quality of being inadequate or falling short of perfection. He knew his own faults much better than she did. Geology. A crack in the Earth's crust resulting from the displacement of one side with respect to the other. They built it right over a geological fault. Put or pin the blame on. Electronics. Equipment failure attributable to some defect in a circuit, loose connection or insulation failure or short circuit, etc. It took much longer to find the fault than to fix it. Responsibility for a bad situation or event. It was John's fault. Sports. A serve that is illegal, e.g., that lands outside the prescribed area. He served too many double faults. Electronics. A graph of frequency response with signal amplitude or gain plotted against frequency. Electronics. A graph of frequency response with signal amplitude or gain plotted against frequency. Electronics. A curve representing the output to input ratio of a transducer as a function of frequency. Biology. The process of an individual organism growing organically. A purely biological unfolding of events involved in an organism changing gradually from a simple to a more complex level. Electronics. The production of semiconductor crystals by slow crystallization from the molten state. Relating to or suitable for growth. The growing season for corn. The electrical discharge that travels along a nerve fiber. They demonstrated the transmission of impulses from the cortex to the hypothalamus. An impelling force or strength. A sudden desire. He bought it on an impulse. The act of applying force suddenly. The impulse knocked him over. An instinctive motive. Profound religious impulses. Electronics. A sharp transient wave in the normal electrical state, or a series of such transients. A semiconductor device capable of amplification. Electronics. A nonlinear electronic circuit whose output is limited in amplitude, used to limit the instantaneous amplitude of a waveform, to clip off the peaks of a waveform. A limiter introduces amplitude distortion. A musical passage moving from one key to another. Rise and fall of the voice pitch. A manner of speaking in which the loudness or pitch or tone of the voice is modified. Electronics. The transmission of a signal by using it to vary a carrier wave, changing the carrier's amplitude or frequency or phase. The act of modifying or adjusting according to due measure and proportion, as with regard to artistic effect.
Become our student and get access to effective and free educational materials. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to become a part of our growing YouTube community and to learn English effectively.